Thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. And just before we get going with the conversation on the MPC resolutions, let's take this background report put together by Musa Abubakar.
With inflation showing signs of cooling and the economy growing at a pace above 3%, Nigeria's apex bank says no sudden moves. The monetary policy rate stays put at 27.50%. The asymmetric corridor remains at plus 500 and minus 100 basis points, while banks still face a cash reserve ratio of 50% and for merchant banks 16%. Liquidity still at 30%.
Maintaining the current policy stance will continue to address the existing and emerging inflationary pressure. The MPC will continue to undertake rigorous assessment of economic conditions, price development, and outlook to inform future policy decisions.
Investor confidence is making a comeback, driven by Nigeria's positive trade surplus and bolstered by a foreign reserve now topping $40 billion. In the banking sector, the recapitalization race is heating up. 8 banks have already crossed the finish line, meeting the CBN's minimum requirement ahead of time.
Liquidity levels at 50% and NPLs at the 5% threshold. So I think in those terms, our banking system is really and truly come of age, and I believe is fit for purpose, and we just can only but get better.
But for the CBN, it's not just about digits, it's about food on tables. The bank is now calling on fiscal authorities to support farmers with inputs aiming to boost local production and tame food inflation. From stabilizing prices to restoring confidence, the central bank says the journey continues, slow and steady, but focus on impact.
Thank you very much, Musa, for that background report. And we already have joining us to discuss the resolution of MPC meeting yesterday in the studio. With us here is Dr. Victor Obo. He's the Director of Monetary Policy Department, Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN. Dr. Obo, it's good to have you on Good Morning Nigeria again.
Thank you very much, and good morning, colleagues. Good morning, Nigeria.
Also joining us to discuss this MPC resolution is economist Yushau Aliyu. Good to have you again.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, and joining us from Lagos via Zoom is Dr. Paul Alaji, Chief Economist and partner, SPM Professionals. Always a pleasure having you join us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Okay. All right. So let's kickstart our conversation this morning with Dr. Obo. Probably you have to throw more light on the fact that why the CBN is retaining, the interest rate at 27.50 and what the inflation rates will be like in long and short term.
Thank you very much, and good morning, Nigerians, once again. As has been reported, the Monetary Policy Committee, in its 301st meeting, decided to retain all the rates and parameters and held them constant, and as it has happened in the last meeting. As you know, the current MPC is strictly data-driven, and all the decisions that were taken yesterday were premised on what the data indicated. The decision to hold the rates derived from the need to sustain the tempo of this inflation that we have recorded. You will recall that in our last meeting here, during the interview, we had a headline inflation of about 22.97%. that has dropped, to 22.2% by June. And that shows some form of deceleration. And that gave us some hope that inflation is on a downward trend. But in spite of that development, there is the need to sustain it, to get it down to a level that is sufficiently controlled, and the risk to inflation recedes to a substantial level. That is on the one side. The other side, why it is important to hold, is the fact that inflation is still at double-digit level. No economy will be happy to see inflation at double-digit level. The preferred region of inflation across the globe, in line with best practice, is single-digit. So central bank has to continue to ensure that that mandate of achieving single-digit inflation, which is conducive for economic growth and investment, is achieved. That is one more point. The other point why there is need to hold and not to ease is the fact that the global uncertainty has not receded sufficiently. We still have headwinds, shocks from the external environment. You will see that even the trade war between U.S. and its trading partners is still happening. There have been no concrete deal or agreement in terms of those countries that are directly at trade war. So that lingering crisis at that level is one of such issues. The geopolitical tensions are also there at the global level. And all this introduces some shocks to the domestic economy. So again, there is need to hold and watch to ensure that that global policy direction is clear enough for us to be able to decide on what next to do.
All right, thank you very much for your opening remarks, Dr. Obo. But I'm wondering, in spite, of the fact that headline inflation is reducing, it hasn't impacted, the daily needs of Nigerians like food and energy, whose costs are, going up. So why is there this disconnect, and how is the MPC working at it to ensure that it reflects in these costs?
Thank you very much. We may not be there yet, but I want to believe that the central bank, through its monetary policy decisions, has moderately stabilized prices and rates. And when we talk about prices, we're talking about prices of goods and services. We're talking about even the price of the naira, vis-a-vis the foreign currency, which we call the exchange rate. There is substantial stability across board. We have not, just as I have said, we have not gone down substantially, and that is one of the reasons for the hold. But there are some level of moderations across, the broad-based items that we have. I'll give you an example. Exchange rate has substantially stabilized. You see that is very clear in the market. The value of the naira against the dollar. You see what it is now and what it used to be. We were talking about over 1,600. It has come to stabilize around 1,500 and a little bit. So that gives you some kind of hope and impetus for investors that if you want to plan your investment and businesses, then you know that the exchange rate is stable enough. And that also transmits to stable prices. So it's a gradual process. It may not have cut across all the items, but I will report that some items have recorded some stable prices and even moderation in some cases.
Okay, it is a gradual process, Dr. Obo. Okay, thanks. Let's bring in Mr. Aliyu into this conversation now. Let's look at the impact of this MPC resolution on the Nigerian economy, on employment, on growth generally. What is your view?
My view is so far from the situation which the economy is experiencing and the decision of the MPC. In recent times, this is one of the most convenient decision of the MPC by halting all the rates. You can understand, before we talk about significant changes in growth, in unemployment, and other factors, there are a lot of macroeconomic ingredients that must be checked.
Okay.
First, we have to look back 365 days. That was July 22nd, 2024, during the 289 meeting of the MPC, where 50 basis points was added to have 26.50 monetary policy rate. And if we recall vividly,
That's year on year.
year on year.
Okay, fine.
And if you recall, I was here and we discussed. I was not very much comfortable by raising the MPR at that time because of certain strengths and weaknesses that are existing, that are also unconventional in nature.
Okay.
If you watch what transpired in this MPC, top membership taking a decision to halt the MPR at 27.50, and when you look at year on year, then definitely it's very significant because of the strengths within the economy, weaknesses within the economy, and then weaknesses outside the economy. These are fundamental. But checking unemployment or checking growth cannot be achieved when we don't look at the rebasing exercise which the MBS has done to check the basket of input that is changing prices significantly within the last 6 months or thereabout. But in my own, I'm comfortable with the decision of the MPR now,
Okay.
and I like the proactive decision to check growth because significantly unemployment is high in the economy. Remember, not unemployment, because by MBS changing unemployment data rate, they have changed the model. But what is more important, if you are dealing with economics, policy measures, and parameters are always scientific
Okay.
and data-driven. But the operators or the practical people within the economy are dynamics. You may get part-time job, but yet struggling to have job. You may have inadequate job, but struggling to have additional job. But in my own, precisely, there is more to be done by the bank, especially now that the bank decide to hold, and the areas of strength, like I mentioned. Now, the foreign reserve is positive. That is very significant. The inflow of exchange of currency of foreign currencies is also significant. Again, too, if you check what the CBN governor refers to as a convenient environment, there is an addition to structurally to balance insecurity in the economy, which is also adding to jobs, because once people are displaced in IDPs, losing their job, losing their economic power, and then going back to that same level, then it's positive. But remember, two issues are important in trying to strike a balance. If you need to have a good growth level,
Okay.
your monetary tools, your fiscal tools. And that is why at this point by CBN halting now and then projecting September, there is a very good factors to consider. One, as we move toward 2026, the capitalization is going on. The bank said yesterday that so far 8 banks have qualified and passed the test. It's also area of strength. So fundamentally, my own fear is as a controlling liquidity.
Okay.
Because the essence of all this adjustment is to control liquidity, so as to control inflation, so as to check price development. And this month, FAC shared over $1 trillion, 1.8 trillion. This is a very high liquidity potential. We must control how we share this proceeds in an attempt to control price stability and also control inflation. Notwithstanding on that sharing, we are all aware that there is a lot of fiscal development, whereas the Revenue Service Board is going to take effect probably January. And by doing that also, the potentials of tax revenues are expected to increase.
Okay.
So all these are risks that are supposed to have been checked or forecast in an attempt to sustain the tempo for inflation to come down.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Yusha Liu. Now, let me get to Dr. Paul Alaje, who's joined us via Zoom. Now, Dr. Alaje, interest rate remains quite high, even though Dr. Obo says the MPC is working towards driving it down to single digits. I'm not sure how achievable that is, but the challenge is that access to credit for ordinary Nigerians and small businesses is also shrinking. So how do you think the MPC can get this, turnaround for Nigerians?
First of all, let me say a very big good morning to you and the guests in the studio. A clear decision was made yesterday. The rates were held. Monetary policy rate held at 27.5% as a merit corridor. One of the most important decisions which central bank used to signal where the interest is plus 500 minus 100 basis points. Cash reserve requirement or cash reserve ratio at 50%, liquidity ratio at 30%. All of this means we are after money supply. We want inflation to trend downward. Even though we have seen reduction to 22.22%, we are not still satisfied, even though we feel it's an improvement from where it was as of the last meeting. That is what the central bank and the monetary policy committee is telling us. So we have also seen relative stability in FX market. It has steadied around 1,600, 1,550 for FX. We have also seen liquidity, which has flooded the markets. In fact, I want that. This is why you are not seeing that transmission of micro. I will tell you, and I hope that I speak to those who really don't understand economics in a way that they can understand my presentation. That has been my goal presentation. You see, every time, I think as of the last time we shared 1.9 trillion naira, and central bank to reduce cost. Stability is the fourth goal of any central bank. FX stability, price stability, which is used to control inflation, and exchange rate, even though there are so many other functions. But these two functions, federal government and the 37 subnational, as well as now, this money, where did they go to? This constitutes further money supply in the system. And we might be of all people miserable if this money are finding themselves into FX market, preparing for the next election or a pre-election year next year. That's on one hand. the second hand, what are we using the money to do when it gets so far? Are we putting them into production or capital expenditure, or are we putting the money into recurrent expenditure? If it's recurrent, you put more pressure on central bank, for God's sake, in order, or monetary policy committee, to keep holding rate while you see marginal reduction in inflation. So FAC is one body that must understand that for us to have policy alignment, we must be very deliberate. The states particularly must be very deliberate in what they put money on. Everything that we support production, that we put Nigerian productive capacity, is what we see. Now, what you talk about is not translating to people's life. So economic has two branches. We have macro economics and we have micro economics. So for macro, when policies are made, as government revenue increase, the answer is yes. Is inflation reducing? The answer is yes. Unemployment will still be relatively high because we still have high NPR, which may crowd out investment. We are borrowing locally. We are also crowding out employment. So those two are there. Then we have exchange rates is relatively stable compared to what we have 2 years ago. Now, when you look at all of this, you now look at it in the reality of micro. Now, what does micro mean? What is happening to household? People cannot see the impact directly, although it takes time. It takes like 6 months, 1 year, but we have since passed 6 months, 1 year, and people are still wondering what is happening. Now, we also have businesses. How are businesses impacting on businesses? Are prices becoming relatively better? Do we now have access to equipment so that we can boost production? Energy supply is increasing. The bank governor said, not the last, the one before this, talking about energy costs, especially electricity. It is one of the most important, and if you like, I can't say important thing, for us to boost our productive capacity. Lastly, is what is happening to government. The confusion here is that government thinks is whatever happens to it, like revenue boost, it means macro. No. Government is one of the units in microeconomics. When you put these three together is when you have macroeconomics. So it's important for us to interpret the difference between micro and macroeconomics very well. Micro is completely different from macro, even though they both interact, and you cannot have results in one. So what must we do to therefore feel this impact? What must we do? One of the things we must do on the immediate to have this impact is that government, I think the leader of our nation, President Tinubu, we need to maybe more association, maybe political approach, talk to governors. You need to invest in your local economics. You need to invest in it. I don't know if central bank have started direct payment into local government as promised and based on the decision that was passed by the Supreme Court. If that is happening, local government should be responsible and accountable. That road, when you construct it, boost economic activity, by all means, our productive capacity is what we should target, so that in the next 6 months or in the next 9 months, maximum 12 months, we can feel this impact. I can tell you, following the current trend, for those of us that are economics and we run econometrics and also run trend analysis, we're expecting inflation to go below 15%, to go around 15% by Q1 or Q2 next year, based on the pattern of growth. Or growth, because right now inflation is increasing at a reducing rate. So that's what we expect. But what happens again when we get into political cycle from 2026? Will politicians depart from the old way of spending dollars for their electoral process? If they don't, I'm afraid all efforts, all benefit that we gain from the pain of policy may come back to us. And I tell you, as monetary economist myself, honestly, it will be a very huge pain on the back of everyone. We only hope that as much as we say that Nigeria should bear, those who want to run for office should also bear, by having trust, by having faith, by having confidence in our local currency called the Naira. Thank you so very much.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Paul Alaje, for your opening remarks there. And he has raised a lot of issues there, and which borders on the need to control liquidity in the market, also the need to have policy alignment. And he also asked the question, if the CBN has started, disbursing money directly to the local government, do you want to react to some of the issues that he raised?
Thank you very much, and thank you, Paul, for some of the issues you have flagged. It is very, very clear that what we are dealing with in Nigeria is excess liquidity. And it is clear. And that is why the policy stance is tight, to ensure that we arrest the growth in money supply to be able to gain full control of inflation. And we are aware of that. And that is why we would want Nigerians to bear with us, that what the central bank is doing is in the overall interest of the entire Nigerians. It's something like a short-term pain to be able to have a long-term ease of life. That is what we are doing. And it is very clear. We are aware of those risks to inflation. The liquidity surge that comes from FAC and all of that. And since this management took over the affairs of the bank, I will assure you that there have been strengthened coordination between the fiscal authority and the monetary authority, like never before. And that has helped in many, many ways. The bank has stopped advances through ways and means, which is a major, major inflationary element. And how has that happened? It's because of that close handshake between the fiscal authority and the monetary authority. There are a lot of platforms where we interact, between revenue generating agencies and the central bank. And all that is helping to at least understand the trajectory of liquidity releases into the economy to enable the bank prepare and mop those liquidities. So all these issues are already in discussion. Even as he mentioned the issue of the forthcoming campaign and the spendings and the rest of that, the bank is already preparing on how to ensure that those spendings are able to be controlled to a point that they are mopped up. And this is the core of the issue, that we don't want a resurgence of upward trend in inflation. So there is need to hold. You see, so all he has spoken is to substantiate the reason for the tight stance that we have maintained, to ensure that we don't relapse and then we lose all the gains we have achieved over time. That is the point.
All right, but he didn't just speak about the campaigns. He spoke with particular reference to spending dollars. And it may seem that the reality is that most Nigerians rely on the parallel market for their forex needs. So what is the CBN doing to check this?
Okay, thank you. Now, there is no appetite to patronize the parallel market now, because the two rates have almost collapsed. They have converged. In fact, 2 days ago, the difference between the two rates were 1 naira. What you can gain in the bank is what you can buy at the parallel market, what we call the BDC rate.
What about selling?
The same thing. It's the same thing. So the appetite is gone because the bank has, removed all the multiplicity of rates that you used to have. So the appetite is gone because of that convergence. So the premium is no longer there. So that is why the exchange rate is stable. That is why it is stable. And it's one of the huge gains. I tell you that in the past, the domiciliary account, which used to hold all the dollar of residents in the country, used to be very, very huge. Recent data has shown a lot of withdrawal from that domiciliary account, showing that Nigerians are beginning to have a lot of confidence in the naira, and they are converting the dollar account into the naira account. Because you can predict that if you want to buy something today at 100 naira per dollar, for example, it will be the same thing in the next 1-2 months. So that stability has restored confidence.
All right.
So,
Dr. Thank you.
But we just want to inform our viewers that you can also contribute to the discussion by sending us your comments and questions via the phone on your displayed on your screen. So just send us via text or WhatsApp messages so that the guest here can respond to your questions and also to your comments. Let's come back to Aliu now. Let's look at the implication of this stability in the foreign exchange market and banking sector. How do you think it will influence the economic growth and further maintain stability across the various sectors?
The two issues are different. The bank is recapitalizing commercial banks, the banking sector. That recapitalization is going to change a lot of models, especially in respect to other components of the economic, the conventional monetary tools that are used. Probably when recapitalization took into effect, definitely concern will not be on MPR, will be on liquidity ratio. So I am thinking now that the bank is able to stabilize the situation using conventional tools and then taking other measures and then still asking other stakeholders, not just merely the fiscal authorities, but other players in the economy, because we have to acknowledge Naira for crude, which has eliminated the pressure in the foreign exchange.
Okay.
And we can now see how that single industry, that's Dangote, is regulating prices, even beyond speculations. But the bank has to also understand that, of course, there are significant factors of strength within the economy. There is also exist other factors that are exogenous and also touching the life of our price regimes. And it has to do with what Dr. Victor mentioned, the tariff wars. These tariff wars, the bank has to go beyond looking at tariffs, but looking at what constitute the tariffs and how to avoid them. Nigeria now is a signatory to BRICS. And some of the Trump policies on these tariff wars is targeting economies that are under BRICS. And at the same time also, Nigeria has so much of economic power within Africa, with African economic environment. So other potentials of investment, especially with the African Development Bank, their intervention is is critical and highly needed to stabilize foreign exchange for many reasons. Our trade policies, now we have trade surplus. The trade surplus are good. It's showing that we are recording additional economic strength in maintaining stability by encouraging our own domestic currency to have a fair play in the international market. But more dangers, which I'm seeing, which we are not looking, all of us, is what is the potentials of the consumers who rely solely on the stability of prices. It's not only the prices that determine their economic strengths, but the income, the power of the purchasing power of the income of individuals. A good scenario of understanding the purchasing power of individuals is when you take last MPC meeting of July 2024, there was no salary adjustment. But after the salary adjustment, is there any improvement in the purchasing power? No. The improvement that purchasing power is bringing down inflation to a minimal level so that that limited income that is within the economy can continue to perform significantly, and if it is performing significantly, it is going to translate to economic growth. And if it is translating to economic growth, we are expecting shared prosperity, because that is what is more important. Because any economy that doesn't share prosperity, and prosperity is only shared among tiers of government, and the tiers of government are mishandling the interventions, and then definitely is going to fire back into the economy as postulated by Dr. Paul Alaje. Look at the scenario. 2026, our election is 2027. Now, if you come under consumerism, our behaviors changes. But the data, if you calibrate all the monetary data, they are scientific in nature. And whatever result they are giving, if the bank remain focused on those data, on the data available to it, to adjust the parameters, these economic parameters, then definitely there is going to be challenge with the potentials of the economy. As I cited, the electioneering issue is of significance to the bank, so that the capitalized bank, let me just be open on this one, so that the politician cannot over the capitalized bank as an asset for electioneering, because we understood today that it is easier to access foreign exchange in the banks than outside the bank in the parallel market. So these are some of the areas of interest that can bring that we can sustain the tempo, and at the same time also begin to focus on achieving greater economic growth.
All right. Thank you very much, Yusha Aliu. I just listened to all of this. I know that while all of these, have impact, whether positive or negative or neutral, on Nigerians, the average Nigerian may not even understand, all of these jargons in economic terms. But Dr. Alaje, what the average Nigerian will be interested in is if the MPC's position is going to bring down, the cost of borrowing, for instance, how it's going to impact them. That's what they'll be looking at. What do you see?
So first of all, MPC decision over time is expected to ensure that price gets to the level of stability. To a large extent, or to some reasonable extent, we have achieved stability in FX. The next stability concern for Monetary Policy Committee and indeed the central bank is how do we have similar stability or reasonable stability in pricing. So I believe that we will get there eventually. But I just told you two major hurdles we need to cross. The first hurdle, you see, those hurdles may not necessarily be so. I will tell you why they are so, if time permit me. The first hurdle we need to cross is increase in money supply. As we make more revenue, those who share it are very happy. They feel that this is more money. They don't know that those sharing is coming at a huge cost to everybody, even including their states, including their local government, including the federation. Number two is what we cannot determine. I cannot determine the behavior of politicians. Is a stochastic variable. I cannot determine it. So, but it's one of the disturbance variables that influence data. So when we assume that it is zero, I'm telling you the impact in my R square is too high for me to ignore it. And that is why I'm bringing it out this morning to say we need some level of regulation that we can monitor as to what politicians think in the election. If not, we may go back to Egypt. In spite of the relative stability we have. And FX determines a lot in our economic life. That said, what else should we have done? You see, it's important for us to note that to be a nation where we have relative policies impacts today, central bank may come up with, let's raise open market operation, let's use T-bills and bonds to mop up excess liquidity in circulation, even though those will come at several costs. But why is it not still impactful enough? Because people earning capacity, we need to look at it. How much are people truly earning? What is the earning capacity of individuals, and what can they do? They have to go by transport. The transporter will say, oh, I've also been affected, therefore my prices has increased. Landlords are raising the rent, and so on and so forth. What should we therefore do? And this may not be something we do tomorrow. This may be, what do we do so that we don't fall into similar economic quagmire that we have seen from 2019, even that is still much present with us today. Maybe I should even say 2016, almost a decade of economic crisis. What should we do? We lack public infrastructure. See, if government says we don't want to increase minimum wage, and there is rail system within the cities and the ones that connect rural area to urban center, prices may be the same. Because how do we spend our money? Look at school system. Most people have lost trust in public institutions, and I mean primary and secondary school. For me, those are the two most important schools, not university or polytechnics. But you see, these two, primary and secondary, how many people are still in public school? Every city I heard went on strike, because local government are supposed to do one or two things for primary school, which they didn't. Imagine we have stable primary school that the cost of educating people is relatively low, or even free education. If it's free, it's relatively low. Then you now look at health. What does it cost to have a healthy population? And the most important of them all is the cost of energy. Power, electricity, and what drives the same. So because as we withdraw in one hand, sustainability of the economy is important, and the individuals that live in that economy, it's also very important. So until we are able to put all of this together, monetary authority will do their bit in order to combat high prices. But if the people say they are not feeling it, look at inflation expectation. I think as published by Central Bank, even though it improved to, I think, about 70% or 60% thereabout. I saw the report that was published by the bank. People are expecting it to be quite high. But we can improve it when what we can use to measure quality of life, things that have to do with energy, health, education, we have provided public goods for them. Because the way we can tackle our problems in a long-lasting method, and what I've seen in Europe, from Poland to France, which may be relatively advanced, but Poland, I can't say Poland is relatively advanced compared to what we have done, because I saw the nature of their economy. I cannot say so. But you see, public infrastructure is what you cannot deny. They have it. And it's not rocket science to have it. And I'm saying to our policymakers and indeed our leaders to start looking. And I'm not saying just federal government will do all of this. Gilivice or Katowice are regions that you can't even say local government. You can't say federal government. Local government are providing rail system, buses, light rails in their communities. So what can we do? You might not be able to do 100 kilometers. Can we do 10 kilometers? Where you have, and moving goods from farms to the urban center, connecting education to farm. The solutions are the same. The question is, will people have energy, want to go through the pain to solve it? Because you see, there is not going to be an end until 2030 to external global economic surge. Another one will come. We saw COVID-19. We have seen Russia, Ukraine. We have seen Israel, Hamas, Israel, Iran. We have seen America, Iran. We don't know which one will come again. But it appears as though that there may be no end until the end of this decade, because we have started it in 2020 and the projection is that it may end in 2030. How do we protect our economy from having external effects, from the impact of what is happening and things that we cannot control? Is for us to reduce the impact of what we spend, of our dependency and our exposure to international community and their economies together.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alaje, for that contribution there. You have raised a lot of issues. How do we protect our economy from external effect? And I believe that those in authority are also watching this discussion this morning, and they are listening to all the solutions that are being proffered. That is the need for us to improve infrastructure if we don't want to go back to Egypt. Anyway, we have some questions here that some of our viewers have sent in some questions which they would want you, our guests, to respond to. Let me start, then Victor will also take his own comments. This one is from Deji Atolani. It says, excess liquidity in the circulation is our issue in the country. And if this is not managed, single-digit inflation rate won't be visible. However, FEC and presidency should also help the macroeconomy by ensuring excess crude oil allocation shared to states, governors, should be strictly used for capital projects. The impact would help to improve economy activities in the state and return would create employment. Just as CBN director said, we are approaching election year. Most of FEC allocation could be converted to dollars, hereby putting further pressure on Naira, leading to increased inflation. That's from DG Atolani. Then this one says, fuel is the major thing that makes prices of all things rise. Please, Mr. President should again take a look at reducing the price of fuel. Anyway, I think the government is doing something. That's why we have the Dangote, and the price is coming down gradually. Then this one says, good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, NTA. Why is central bank paying a lackadaisical attitude in disbursing this money to local government areas? That is the local government allocation now. That's what he's talking about. This one says they should please clarify clarify whether they have started paying allocation to local governments. That is the CBN, Mr. Obo. This one says, this from Honorable Nahima Atu from Jos. He said, I believe dollar can be crushed down to 500 Naira to dollar, because other smaller African countries did, but politics and interests wouldn't allow that. Why will our country policy allow dollars to be used for payment transactions in some hotels and other businesses? Then this, the last one that I have here, I expect the MPC to also include in their discussion on how to reduce the rate of incessant charges that arises from the use of USSD for bank transaction. As soon as the users the bank code, even when transaction has not been completed, maybe because of bad network or something, 6 to 8 Naira has already been debited from your account. Deduction continue as long as you send the bank code for withdrawal or other transaction. My recommendation is that the transactions should be completed before such deductions are made. Oh, well, Dr. Obo, you want to respond to this before Victor will now chill out, roll out some of his own comments.
Thank you very much, Nigerians. And this feedback, I tell you, is very useful, because a number of them will have to be taken back to the office to ensure that we address, like the issue of cost of the charges for transaction.
Yes.
Are issues that we need to really take a look at. And I assure you that the bank is very serious about that. And that is why a full department, Consumer Protection and Financial Inclusion Department, is established to address all the complaints of banks. And it is open. If you check the central bank website and even those other social media platforms of central bank, you will see a link where you can direct all your complaints to. And I tell you, staff are dedicated to those complaints, and they address them strictly. So please note that if within 2 weeks your commercial bank is not able to address your concerns, you are at liberty to send those concerns to Consumer Protection Department. There's a help desk that is fully dedicated to addressing the complaints of Nigerians. That is just by the way. The point raised by DG is very, very important. And I'm sure that we are all working together. It's one economy, whether it's fiscal or monetary. We are all operating one economy. And all our roles we are trying to do are complementary to ensure that we achieve macroeconomic stability. So the point he made about ensuring that a larger portion of our revenue, goes into capital expenditure is critical. And I'm sure government is doing so much in that regard to ensure that capital expenditure increases, because that portion of expenditure is not inflationary as such, because it's not an idle fund, rather than the one that is idle and is chasing some other, goods. Those are the one that drives prices up. So that is, by the way, the other point relates to
Local government.
Local government.
Local government, yes.
Disbursement of fund to local government.
Yes, I'm not in a position to clear the air on that. I think the central bank holds accounts of governments, and because it's a banker to the federal government. So the central bank acts in line with the instruction of the government, of the federal government. So that is something that has to happen at the highest level. I don't have detailed information on that.
But I think that's a very important matter, because apparently, a lot of people are raising this same issue. Otherwise, the autonomy for local government becomes meaningless if they are not getting their finances directly. A lot of people raise these issues, whether we are discussing monetary policy resolutions or not. This issue keeps coming back.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
that's the interest of Nigerians, because this is the government, closest to the ordinary Nigerian.
That is
but I have some messages from Joel Ayigun. We have been having this kind of decision on holding or not holding all these indices, and it is like a ritual. What are the indications that these are not the theories we have been hearing? All right, thank you, he says. And from Nehemiah from Jos Plateau State, I believe the dollar can be crashed down to even 500 naira to a dollar. He says because other smaller African countries did, but politics and interest wouldn't allow that. Why will our country's policy allow dollars to be used for payment of transactions in some hotels and other business places?
Maybe you pause there.
Yes,
Let him respond.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. The first, let me address the issue of the dollar. Yes, the dollar can be crashed to 500 naira per dollar. It's possible, and that is our prayer and our hope. But you know that what we are doing is to ensure that we don't fix the exchange rate. We have gone beyond fixed exchange rate regime. And what I'm saying is not about Nigeria. It's global best practice. So what we're doing is a regime that is competitive enough so that the Naira can trade against other currencies. You get the point? Without fixing it. That makes it competitive. It makes your economy competitive. And all the restrictions are gone. And when you do that, it allows investors to bring in investment into your country. Now, when we started, we saw a huge depreciation in the Naira. Now, that is beginning to stabilize. Now, we have an external reserve that has gone beyond 40 billion. If you look at that compared to where we are coming from, we are at 20-something billion dollars. Now we are around over 40 billion. That alone gives you confidence and investors that if you bring in your investment to the country, you'll be able to repatriate your proceeds anytime you want. So it is of interest that we keep our exchange rate competitive. That is one. The drivers of a strong currency, local currency, has to do with our balance of trade. How much are we able to produce within the country? How much are we able to export to be able to gain, foreign currencies, example, USD, United States dollars, into the country. So that balance of trade is the determining factor upon what your exchange rate should be. The other point is even the issue of how much do we spend on imports. And I'm happy that part of the reason why the exchange rate is stabilizing is because there is a tremendous fall in the volume of imports. Nigerians are cutting down the imports.
Okay.
And so that is to show you why. Because it shows that gradually we are trying to provide some form of, supply within the economy that is meeting our domestic needs.
Well, that's good news,
Which
Dr.
is gradual,
Dr. Obo. We have to pause you there because we need to go on a break now. When we come back, you just complete your thoughts there. So stay with us. We'll take a break now, and the conversation on the MPC resolution will continue. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. You're still on to Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. And our discussion this morning is still on the MPC resolution. And before we went on break, Dr. Obo was giving us some explanation concerning the comments that were sent by some of our viewers. But I think, Victor, you
yes, I still have quite a number of messages to go here. This one reads, good morning. Just watching your program, Good Morning Nigeria. Please, I might be wrong, but the domiciliary account is low because people now keep their dollars at home for fear of EFCC. All right, that's one. And from that doesn't have a name, but from Abdul Ajaka, who is writing in from Lagos. Good morning. I really want to know the reason why government dropped the Naira for crude policy, because I think it will really help reduce the price of PMS at the local market. That's a second. And from James Early, a concerned citizen from Sierra Leone. Good morning. I hope all the strategies you are putting in place for better Nigeria works. Okay. And again from Nehemiah too, as far as Nigerians are concerned, if all this grammar will not translate to prices of goods, not just slashing down, but reducing to 50%, it doesn't make sense, he says. Can it be that the dollar transactions being done by banks as a business for their earning wouldn't allow crashing down of the dollar? That's from Nehemiah. And finally, from Garba Mohammed here in Wuse, Abuja. Please, what is happening to local government allocations? Is the Supreme Court judgment thrown into dustbin? Please do something to save the silent majority. You see, I was telling you off camera that this is a concern. A lot of people are talking about it.
Thank you very much. And again, I appreciate the feedback, which is useful for us in evaluating our policies and their impact. Because the overall essence of policy is to ensure that it has positive impact on the livelihood of Nigerians and all residents in Nigeria. Let me begin by answering the questions whether these rate decisions are just ceremonial. The point is that they are not. And I have evidence to show. Where we are today in terms of our headline inflation is not the same 3 months ago. For the past 3 months, we have recorded sustained decrease in inflation. Yes, it might not be as fast as we would want it, but that is the nature of inflation, as we know from economic theory. Inflation or prices are downward sticky. It's very easy to raise prices. It's difficult to bring it down. It takes time. So that is the point. And that is why the policy is held such a point that there is gradual, decline in prices until we get to a level that we can sufficiently, sustain. Now, one other option is to tighten. If you want to aggravate the rate of decline, you could tighten further. Why did the MPC not take that option, that decision? It is because of the regard it has for growth. We already know that the private sector, the MSMEs, and the rest of them are already complaining of high interest rates, borrowing rate. And that is part of the reason, the consideration of the MPC, to balance the act. That even though we are trying to bring down prices, we shouldn't crash it at the expense of growth. So that trade-off between, inflation control and growth has to be managed in a very, delicate manner. Okay. That is on that side. The other side has to do, the other question has to do with some banks using the naira, or some hotels are accepting the dollar.
Yes.
To the best of my knowledge, I'm not aware. What we know is that the naira remains our own currency of transaction in this country.
Okay.
And even where the public is trying to sell the naira, you saw how the bank has been enforcing its rule in terms of clamp down on all those ones. So that is it. The issue of direct remittance to the local government, as I said, will be taken back. And then I'm sure the necessary authorities are listening.
They will respond to that.
And they will respond to that.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Obo. I know that Ali Tu and Dr. John would like to respond to some of these questions. But let me just take this one. These ones that have just been sent now. This one says, good morning, presenters and guests in the studio. My questions as a layman is, which of the followings that can bring down inflation in a nation, make the nation better? Is it allowing importation of goods, both consumable and others, into the country, or making sure that the country produce what the citizens use and consume? You understand? He's talking about inflation. He's talking about importation and having a productive economy now. And that's from Alaji Garko. Karu is from Karu, Abuja. Then this one is Anchor Bride Lending. Hope the farmers that collected the loan are paying back. Well, that's a question for the Ministry of Agriculture. What is MPC? This person does not know what MPC means. Probably you have to give us a better explanation to that. Good morning, Nigerians and the guest in the studio. I'm Isutugo Arinze Collins, writing from Enugu State. I want to commend the CBN Governor, Cardoso, and his team for the work done, for the gains so far in the stability of the Naira and growing of our foreign reserve. They should focus more on expansionary monetary policy like lowering the interest rate and open market. Anyway, Ali, you can probably respond to some of the comments and questions.
I can respond, but vividly, the director of MPC is here.
Yes,
MPC,
of course.
We Monetary Policy Committee of Central Bank.
Yes, we also want you to also talk, so that's why.
But if I'm responding,
yes,
I will respond in two ways. One, to the bank. Inflation, the definition, sometimes we find it difficult to even continue to find, is persistent, seemingly irresistible upward of prices. And every individual can understand inflation when you look at a tire that is deflated and you are set for a journey. You cannot make that journey until there is a level of air in the tire. And that is what the economy is also looking. You cannot attain economic growth if you don't have prices. And prices has to do with production, and production has to do with profit. And in attempt for producers to have profit, prices has to be changing depending on the variable costs involved. And that is why inflation is necessary for an economy, but high inflation is not, is dangerous to economies, just like high volume of air in a tire is dangerous. But coming back to our senses, the central bank is the only authority that is mandated by law to ensure price stability. And they have the mechanism and the instrument. And the instrument is controlling liquidity. But one thing that is very difficult in emerging economies, including third world economies, is that when the bank is trying to limit liquidity, the politicians are sharing money. When the bank is trying to reduce the import bills, myself and you refuse to change our appetite because we want to consume what is imported, all of us. So these are some of the things. So there is need for discipline from the citizens to understand that it's good to have what you produce as your attire. It's good to have what you consume as your food. It's good to even have what gives you health to have it within the economy so that you reduce import bills. One fundamental issue I want to go, Dr. Umbo, is that MPC don't need any prayer for now. MPC need to watch the economic scenarios and also to be more careful. We are operating floating exchange rate. So long as the bank cannot fix the rate at which our domestic legal tender can exchange for others, then definitely it's not also healthy for direct devaluation.
Okay, let Dr. Alaji also comment, probably respond to some of the comments that our viewers have sent this morning.
So let me start by saying that I understand the central bank is the government's bank, and not to put the central bank under unnecessary pressure. It depends on what the federation wants. If the federation wants the central bank to take decision regarding disbursements, then that will be known. But you know, the question directly is not to central bank, it's to the federation to state that giving money directly to local government, provided local government will use the money based on what is expected, then it will help our economy to grow. The intention is not to put the central bank under unnecessary pressure. Now, speaking to the question whether it's important to import, that's what to bring inflation down, or to produce. Now, production is very central to stability of most nations, especially when funds are allocated directly to public goods or they are directly related to infrastructure or into production. I want to say that that will aid or that will help in stabilizing the economy. Now, when you import, I can tell you that we cannot produce everything that we are consuming. It's practically impossible. But there are some kinds of goods that we can produce. Bureau of Statistics reveal that 80% of all our finished goods, all finished goods consumed in Nigeria are imported. And that includes many things you have in the studio there. The tie I have on here, the shirts, the clothes, and so many other things are imported. So, and I think where the question may be coming from, because I've gotten this kind of question before, is that, oh, why are we importing some food items? Before the food items were imported, you saw price surge. I want to make reference to rice to 100,000, namely because of insecurity, namely because of so many other concerns that perhaps I cannot speak to directly on here. You know, we have seen prices surge. But the advice I gave, of course, when I was consulted by one of the committees regarding whether we should allow for import or not, is that this cannot go beyond 6 months or 1 year. And if it goes beyond, then the benefit we'll gain for price reduction may be reversed. 2, we might also lose those that are working on those farms that can help boost employment and also boost productivity locally. By all means, Nigeria must come first in all that we do. So that would be my response to the question that has been asked regarding should we encourage local. We need to look at where we have comparative cost advantage before we determine whether we want to produce locally or we want it to be imported. Comparative cost advantage, relative cost, comparative comparative cost advantage is something important that we need to look at. Not just absolute, but relative or comparative is very, very important. Somebody also speak to the issue of Monetary Policy Committee and why can they not just cut rates. If Monetary Policy cut, I've just been laughing when I heard the question. I don't think Monetary Policy Committee, we have the chairman here, please. If they cut rate, we need to understand our audience and the listeners. There might not be as economic savvy. Everybody cannot be an economist. I'm not a medical doctor, for instance, so I cannot tell you how to combine chloroquine and ampicillin and paracetamol. I don't know anything about drug interaction, so I don't know. So Monetary Policy Committee, for now, are taking the right decision by holding rates. Cutting rates might further induce inflation. The money you have in your pocket may never be sufficient again. What I will not subscribe to is to hastily increase rates because we want to quickly force down inflation. I have said that there are other factors inducing inflation for developing country or third world country apart from policy change or increase in rates. Those things we need to pay attention to them. Unfortunately and sadly, they are largely outside the control of MPC or largely outside the control of monetary of central bank. They are more with trade and fiscal authority, and that is why I've chipped in some of those things I think we need to do. I'm not speaking to trade authority as such because I've seen relative stability in FX market. If I've not seen, I would have also mentioned a few things that has to do with trade. But for fiscal authority, I've mentioned we need to pay attention to that. And the order that lies right in front of us since less than 12 months, I've also mentioned that. So with this, I think before the end of Q1 2026, we might be seeing that relative much more reduction. But what can make that reduction in inflation to be short-lived is what we need to start thinking about. And the director of monetary policy have also mentioned to us that the bank is already looking at all means to ensure that when that starts happening, they're able to mop up such liquidity in the system, which I think is important that that happens. Beyond those, I also think that INEC we need to come to the fore to sound strong warning and tell what will happen if.
All right, Dr. Paul Alaje, thank you very much for the points you have raised. I think we lost connection to you there, but thank you. Let me get back quickly. We've run out of time almost completely, Dr. Obu. Now, some critics have argued that the tightening of the monetary policy has a way of crowding out, money that goes to the real sector. And I'm wondering what measures the CBN is putting in place to ensure that, essential sectors like agriculture and the SMEs are not left behind. In a minute, please.
Thank you very much. Tightening at this point, we all agree, is necessary to bring inflation down, which does no one any good. Now, there are other avenues through which SMEs, MSMEs will be able to access credit at cheaper rates. And these are within the fiscal policy purview. We have a number of development banks. We have the Bank of Agriculture. We have the Bank of Industry. We have the Development Bank of Nigeria, which provides some kind of, credit at cheaper rates. These are all avenues that those MSMEs will be able to access within this time. Even at that rate too, some firms are also able to access, some form of credit from the banks.
All right. I think it's a good place to leave this conversation today. Dr. Victor Obu, Director, Monetary Policy Department at the Central Bank of Nigeria, we thank you very much for your perspectives, the light you have shed on this conversation and your time. Thank you very much for coming.
My pleasure.
Let me also thank Ayusha Aliu, an economist who has joined us, and as always, your points have helped in illuminating the issues. We thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much.
And lastly, but by no means the least, Dr. Paul Alaje, who is economist and partner at SPM Professionals. Always a pleasure having you. We thank you very much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you so much for having me, sir.
And that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. Until tomorrow when we come again, I'm Victor Azu saying bye for now.
And I'm Ademolade. Please enjoy the rest of your day.